Hello everyone and welcome to Total Quilter Monthly for January 2021. My name is Mark Garetz and I'm a National Floriani educator. And this month we're going to be continuing our dive into artwork, and we're going to be talking about drawing shapes. These are the pre-built-in shapes like squares, rectangles, triangles, circles, etc. So let's go ahead and get started with this month's lesson on working with the built-in shapes. Like I said in the intro, those are the built-in shapes like squares, circles, triangles, pentagons, etc. There are two ways to get to them. One is to come up here to this icon right here, and you'll notice it says rectangle when I hover over it. That's because that's the last tool that I used, and that will change depending on whatever the last tool that you used was. And you notice there's a little down arrow right here. That tells me that if I click this icon, I'm going to get some more options I need to choose from. So that's one way to get to it. The other way is to get to it using this same icon right here in the shortcuts menu. But let me show you the difference. So if I click here, I'm going to get a choice of rectangle, ellipse or circle, triangle, pentagon, or hexagon. If I do the same thing down here, I'm going to get one more option, and that is custom shapes. And custom shapes are the pre-built-in shapes that are not these basic shapes, but from your custom shapes library, which is also located up here. So on the shortcut menu, you get to custom shapes by clicking this icon. And if you're not using the shortcut menu, you can get to your custom shapes by clicking here. But we're not going to talk about custom shapes today. What we're going to talk about is these shapes. So let's go ahead and click this icon, and then to start drawing a custom shape, you click the shape that you want. So let's start with a rectangle, and you'll notice that my cursor changes to a crosshair with a little rectangle by it to remind me that I'm going to draw a rectangle. So the rectangle always starts to draw from a corner of it, so the corner would depend on the direction that you draw. So normally I click and drag from the top left down to the bottom right. So you see when I do that, I get a rectangle. Now I'm dragging it. I haven't let off the mouse yet. And this gives me the ability to change the shape of it. Okay, so if I let off right here, I get that rectangle. All right, I'm going to select it and delete it. I'm going to press my delete key. And I'm going to do it one more time because I want to show you the other variations. So if I want to draw from the bottom up, or this side up, or this side down, all I have to do is do that, and it will draw from whatever direction I draw from. Okay, so that's how that works. And it gives me a rectangle based on how I've dragged that cursor for width and height. So I'm going to select everything and delete it. This time I'm going to use this delete shortcut right here. So I want to show you one more option that you can do, and that is if I want to draw a perfect square, I hold down the control key while I click and drag. So I apologize you cannot see me holding down the control key, but I'm going to press control on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click and then drag. And you see, no matter how I move the mouse, I'm moving it all around, I'm still getting a perfect square as long as I have control held down. So now if I let off the mouse, I get a perfect square. Now let me show you one more thing to avoid, and that is letting off the mouse at the wrong time, or letting off the key at the wrong time rather. So if I choose a rectangle again, I can start to draw. If I realize that I wanted a square, I could now press control while I'm still holding down the mouse button, and I go to that perfect square. But if I let off control early, like I let it off before I let up the mouse button, you'll see that it snaps back to a rectangle rather than a square. And again, if I press control, it goes back to a square. So the sequence is, let me do it one more time. If I click control on my keyboard and hold it down, and then I click and drag, then I let off the mouse, then I let off control on the keyboard, then I will get that perfect square every time. So that's the square. Let me show you the ellipse, which is basically how we draw circles or ovals. So it works basically the same way. So I'm going to click the ellipse. Now if I click and drag, I can change it. Okay, so I can make it skinny as an oval. If I hold down control one more time, I get a circle, perfect circle. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let's move on to the next one. These all work pretty much the same. Now I'm going to get a triangle. Okay, I can change how that triangle works. All right, if I hold down control, once again, I'll get a perfect or equilateral triangle every time. All right, so let me delete that. I got two more to show you. One is the pentagram. So again, if I hold down control, I get a perfect pentagram. If I don't hold it, I can change how that pentagram looks just by dragging and let off, and I get a pentagram. And the last one is, of course, the hexagon. Okay, so if I come here to hexagon and I drag it, I can get a hexagon shape. Right, if I hold down control, I'll get a perfect hexagon. Now, one of the things about the perfect hexagon is that this makes a hexagon with perfectly even sides. But you'll notice that it does not look, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me undo that. You'll notice that it does not look perfect. It looks kind of squashed. That's because that's what happens when all the sides are equally distant. It just doesn't look right. So you can adjust these once you've drawn them. Let me show you with the hexagon by selecting it and then using the icons, or excuse me, the little squares in the corner of the bounding box to resize it, just like you would resize any other object. So if I do this, I'm going to get a proportional resize. If I want to squish it to make it look more even, I can do it by dragging one of the boxes in the center. So the edge boxes, the corner boxes, they give you proportional resizing. If I use one of the center boxes, so in the center of the edge, that gives me the ability to squash it or stretch it any way I want. All right, so that's the basics of drawing your shapes. Now, I want to show you a couple other things. So for example, let's say I draw a shape and I need it a specific size. I have a couple ways I can accomplish that. Let's use a square for this example. So let's say I'm going to draw a square and I've drawn it and I forgot to hold down control. I can click it, come over here to my properties box, and I can click the transform button. And here I can change the size, but I can also make it a perfect square if I wanted to. So let's say what I really wanted was a 4-inch on a side square. So because I don't have a square here in my height to width ratio, I'm going to turn off maintain aspect ratio, and I'm going to come here and overtype that value to a 4, overtype this value to a 4, click apply, and now I've got a perfect 4-inch square. So that's the way you would resize a rectangle or any other shape to the exact shape that you want. All right, and then you can move the shape around by hovering over this little X in the center here till you get that hand icon, and then clicking and dragging it to move it wherever you want to. There's another way that you can get a perfect shape, and that is to use the grid. So now I'm going to turn on my grid settings, and I have my grid set up of 1/4 inch. Actually, I don't know how I have it set up. Let me look here. I'm going to go to grid settings, and what I've done is right click on the ruler, and I have it set up as 1/4 inch, yes, and horizontal every 8 lines. So, and vertical every 8 lines for my grid major. So my grid spacing is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. And then my grid major is every 8. So the grid major are these purple lines, and these are every 8, so that means I get 2 inches across each one of these squares. All right. So while I'm here, I'll show you another way you can do what I was going to do, which is called Snap to Grid. So I'll turn that on right here and click OK. Now, I could have also done that by right-clicking on the ruler bar and clicking Snap to Grid, because I could do it either way. So I can turn it off right there, but I'm going to turn it back on. So if, let's say I wanted a 4-inch perfect square, I now have Snap to Grid turned on. I know that each one of these sub-squares here is 2 inches on a side. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and 2 plus 2 is 4. So now if I come up and get my rectangle tool, and I get anywhere close to the intersection of these grid lines, because I have Snap to Grid turned on, it's going to snap to this point. So I don't have to be precise. So I'll be imprecise on purpose. You see how it snapped to that corner? And as I drag down and to the right, it automatically snaps. So if I let off the mouse, it's a little hard to see right now, but I've got a perfect 4-inch by 4-inch square. So let's talk about that hard to see thing for just a second. So I'm going to click on it to select it, and I'm going to come over here to my properties box and look right here. There's something called pen width. All right, pen width is the thickness of that drawing line. Now the default is 0.0, which is also known as a hairline. And if I take that and I put in, say, a 2 millimeter pen width and click apply, I will get a fatter line here. All right, so I see that fat line. Now, it's very important that you understand that seeing this fat line is only for visual purposes. All right, so there really is only one center line here based on that very thin hairline. No matter how thick I make this, so if I make this like a 5 millimeter line, okay, I get this fat piece here. And you might think, okay, now if I come in here, I've got this fat piece, and I could change it so that if I changed it to, say, a fill, I would get a fill that goes in between these two edges. And that's not really what's going to happen, because I still only have one center line here. So if you're exporting this for cutting, remember that you're not going to get 2 lines. You're only going to get a single line. No matter what this looks like here, it's still a center line. All right, now that's just the way the line width works. So let me change it back to 0 and click apply, and now I've got back to my center line. All right, now I want to show you one other thing, and that concerns circles. And so I'm going to change my tab here, my design window tab, to this design, which I've pre-put in a circle. And I've locked it so it's like a backdrop and I can't move it. And what I want to show you is, what if I want to match the outline of this circle with a circle that I've drawn? All right, so it's kind of hard to do that by using the ellipse tool, because you don't really know where to start. All right, I could start here, say in this upper corner, which would make you think that it would make a perfect circle that matches this if I hold down Control, but it really won't. Here, I'll show you what happens when I do that. So you see how it doesn't actually do that? All right, so I'm going to undo drawing that. All right, and I'm going to select a darker color so you can see what I'm drawing over here. And what I want to show you is how you get this to match. All right, so I'm just going to draw a circle. It's not even going to be a perfect circle. It doesn't even really matter, all right, because I'm going to show you the technique for matching this up. So I'm going to come here to my select tool and select it. And now what I'm going to use is the sizing handles to match it up. All right, so I'm going to drag this over to about that edge. I'm going to drag, and precision at this point is not important. I'm just going to get it approximately to the right shape. All right, and I'm going to do that for all 4 edges. And you can see it's pretty close, but it's not perfect. So I'm just going to keep adjusting it to where the edges match. There we go. All right, one more adjustment here. All right, and that is pretty close. All right, so that is how you match a circle up to an existing other circle or object. So that's the basic drawing shapes and how to use them. I want to thank you for watching, and I want to invite you to come back next month when we will talk about how to manipulate these shapes using things like removing overlapping shapes, welding them together, excluding or trimming parts of them, etc. So that'll be a nice fun lesson. So we'll see you next month.